So next up we have, it's funny because I wrote a tweet about Haas. He is the one person that we've booked debates for where he doesn't even ask who he's debating, just freaking comes and shows up. How are you tonight, Haas?
I'm good. I'm good,
So
and I'm ready to rumble.
yeah, you want to introduce yourself, tell people where you lie on the political spectrum, and where people can find you.
I'm Haas from the Infrared Show. We're Marxist-Leninists. Simple as that.
All right, so we are going to start with opening statements. Can be as little as 1 minute, no longer than five, about the topic and your stance. After that, we'll open up the floor. For those of you watching, if you want to ask questions, tag politically provoked who your question is addressed to. Ask them throughout the debate. We'll jot them down because there will be a cutoff at the end. And once the cutoff happens, we will only accept super chats. So if you want your question read for free, get it in while you can. After the Q&A, we will go into closing statements and final thoughts. So Catboy, you said you have a bit of a long. You're probably going to use your entire time. So why don't you get us started with your opening statement?
Oh shit, okay, I'm going first. Alright, nervous. Alright. Let me just get to the paper. Alright, so I guess I'll take my 5 minutes now. In my opinion, communism is an ideology that is more often than not forced on the people, with nary a care for those who suffer under the boot. This boot of communism is justified internally and externally by a fundamentally undemocratic and violent worldview. Internally, the communist finds its justification in party dogma. The educating dictatorship is a term coined by critiques of 20th century communism. It basically explains an ideologically family which sees its right to leadership coming not by the consent of the governed, like I believe it should be, but internally by the perceived inherent correctness of communist thought. Its raison d'etre is to lead the masses to a revolution from above, whether they like it or not, and eventually, when they can be trusted, the masses will finally have a say in it. Externally, communism is justified by a series of failed promises and lies. The communist economy grows quicker than any others. This is a lie. The communist despot offers a better life than any other. This is too a lie. The communist promises to be more peaceful than any other. Also a lie. The communist promises to be more careful manager. Well, in my own land of birth, Romania, the communist dictatorship failed to even supply their own government-managed bread lines with bread. It was a shit show. In many debates, such as the one we are having today, I hear one argument. I'm not defending the entire Soviet system or any of its failings as a whole. I just have to admit that the centrally planned economy is more successful and it's a better system. In my view, this is a bad justification. As an empathetic man and as a Christian, this seems heartless to me. Ignoring human suffering in favor of a good and efficient economy sounds like something your evil bourgeoisie should be doing, not anyone purporting to be for the common people. Luckily, you aren't their only option. Christian democracy not only offers a better physical life, but a healthier spiritual one. We support markets, but also humane labor laws and trade unions to allow the workers to advocate for themselves, not be dictated to by a party elite. The Christian Democrat looks to the future without ignoring our heritage, our past, and our faith. And most importantly, we envision a modern world with neither heartless neoliberalism nor despotic communism. That's my opening statement.
Right. So Haas.
So we were here to talk about the difference between so-called social market economy versus Marxist socialism as experienced by those who lived under it. Well, to begin, I just want to clear any worries you have. I'm not here to actually say, no, I don't defend the Soviet Union, but I just defend some abstract idea. No, I do defend the Soviet Union. I defend the Soviet Union. I defend the communist states, and I defend the legacy of 20th century communism. So rest assured, I am here to defend communist states. So let's get that out of the way. The second thing is you mentioned a whole lot of things about communists lying. Almost all of the lists you gave were a combination of things you made up. In other words, things they didn't actually directly promise in order to lie about in the first place. And also things I don't think would hold up to scrutiny when we would interrogate them one by one in terms of whether they were, in fact, lies. It's interesting that you come from Romania, a country whose story is basically defined by the fact that upon leaving the Comcon, the communist economic bloc, and becoming indebted because of IMF loans, a country completely ravaged by the IMF, by international capitalism. And Romania, to this day, remains extremely underdeveloped relative to the rest of Europe. Joining the EU did not do much for the Romanian people, and the Romanian infrastructure left behind, and which is almost entirely, by the way, left over from the communist era. So I wonder if you are just waiting for Christian democracy to come make Romania have new infrastructure and actually have new industry, because whatever system Romania has now has not been able to accomplish that.
That is true. Romania has been I would say permanently scarred by the mismanagement of the communist regime. I would also say that while people poll positively for Ceausescu now, I think at least half or almost half of the population does. People overwhelmingly poll even more positively for the old monarch. A lot of people see the communists as using the Soviet Union to topple our monarch, topple our constitutional monarchy, although I'm not a constitutional monarchist, and basically pull us into the red bloc against our will.
Well,
Again,
that's
Ceausescu was only popular because he was one of the only nationalist communist leaders. He believed, at least in a sovereign Romania.
Well, here's a fatal flaw to your argument: is the fact that people lived under Ceausescu that are still alive today, right? No one lived under the monarchy, or maybe some do, but they're a completely tiny marginal part of the population. So the memory of this monarchy and the memory of Ceausescu differ because there's actually lived experience behind people who lived under Romanian communism.
Oh.
I have no doubt that Romanians are fervently nationalistic people and pull well for the monarchy and whatever, but people are not doing that because they recall life under the monarchy. They do it just because of Romanian nationalism.
Well, to be fair, he polled more popular than the communist government throughout the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. He's still more popular.
Yeah. Can you show me
That's
polling?
why he was famously he was banned from entering Romania by the Communist Party because they were afraid if he came and started giving speeches, people would start getting uppity.
No, I find it interesting that there's actually polling data for that in the under communist rule. Do you have a source you can reference?
Fuck. I'm feeling stupid because I did mention I'm from Romania, but Romania is one of the few countries I didn't actually collect data for that wasn't economic. I do have a list of some of the more popular to talk about communist nations going over Soviet nostalgia, because I figured we would be talking about that a lot. Okay. The ones I do have, my main arguments are going to be revolving around the Czech Republic and East and West Germany.
Well, I actually
didn't. That I have.
Hold on, I didn't actually prepare for anything regarding the Czech Republic, so let's confine it to Germany, which was what the initial topic was about.
The Czech Republic should be pretty easy. I know I would understand that you don't want to talk about the Czech Republic because communists came in and invaded them.
No, it's because I didn't do any preparation for the Czech Republic, a country I don't even have a lot of familiarity with. You wanted to debate about Germany and.
I said those are a number of nations I have. So, of the nations that I do know about that I've collected data for, this includes East Germany, Poland, the Czech Republic, Slovakia, Hungary, Lithuania, Russia, Ukraine, and Bulgaria. Only Russians and Ukrainians still overwhelmingly support the communist regime. The exact, if you wanted to give you the source, the exact polling questions. They were polled on two separate things. Whether they, let me bring this link into our private chat so you can see it. If that's dead or not.
This is from 2019. Earlier polls from the 2000s, which had a larger and more proportion of people who actually lived under communist states, in all of the countries you mentioned, had a much higher proportion of people who said that life was good under communist rule.
Well, then you should be able to find me those sources. But if you're not
I can find you a source right now for East Germany.
Yeah. So why don't you? If you can find them for all of these countries, that'd be nice. You can find those while
But
I'm
this,
reading this
what
out.
is the debate? Okay, what's the debate called? What is the
You were
title of
given the
this
debate
debate?
topic.
What is the
So
title of
you
this
were
debate?
given the debate topic. You
Yeah,
agreed
yeah.
to it.
What
This
is
would
it?
be a debate between Marxist
Reiterate it for
socialism
us.
and Christian democracy. Now,
Yeah.
Christian democracy is one of those ideologies which helped in European Reconstruction after World War II and Reconstruction after the fall of the
Okay, I need
Soviet
you to
bloc.
calm down, buddy. The title was Rhine capitalism versus Marxian socialism as regards the people who lived under them. And those people can only be Germany, East Germany versus West Germany.
No, when the debate topic, when we met in regards to the people living under them, I was talking more about, like human rights and stuff of the people who would be living under these systems in the past and theoretically in the future. It's not that we're only allowed to talk about the opinions of elderly people and from these post regimes.
That's fine,
Um,
but people who didn't live under these states are not really qualified to give an actual fair judgment of what life was like under them.
Do you think that only people who happen to be citizens under a current regime are allowed to speak on it and we can't look at data?
Did I say that? I said they're not qualified to give an accurate representation of what life was like under it because they did not actually live under those states. It's pretty simple.
Well, we can look at things. We can look at quantifiable things and judge it that way. I'm not going into, well, people were sad under this regime. I'm not talking about that. So to continue with my statement, in only Russians and Ukrainians poll as supporting the old communist dictatorships. They're the only two countries
That's
that
one
I
poll.
listed where people both, and these are two separate questions that were asked. People did not support the move to multi-party democracy, and they did not support the move to liberal markets. However, in East Germany, Poland, the Czech Republic, Slovakia, Hungary, Lithuania, all people overwhelmingly supported the move to a multi-party democracy and the move to a liberal markets. The only outlier was Bulgaria. The only outlier was Bulgaria, who remained 50-50.
Your data's wrong. You have false data. 38% of people in the East see reunification as a success as compared to a majority who don't. To this day, 57% of East Germans consider themselves to be second-class citizens within Germany. So your polling data is either inaccurate or it is not an actual full and fair representation of the facts at hand.
That's not the same question. I understand
because there's different polls that give different.
Well, yeah, East Germans do feel left behind because, as most other communist states, they have been economically ravaged by the Communist Party,
which
and
is
they
a
have
lie.
not been able to catch
which
up.
is a lie, right? It's
Well,
a lie.
I would say the entire history of the world begs to differ.
Well, okay. Here's the tough thing about talking to you about this, right? You're jumping all over Europe, and I would like to address each country separately. Like I can talk to you about why East Germany had the history it did very easily. Because Germany was the topic. Germany was supposed to be the topic. Shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck up. Stop fucking interrupting me. Shut the fuck up. East Germany was going to be the topic of this debate. You want to run from East Germany to the Czech Republic to Poland to Ukraine to Russia, all over Europe. Can you stop globetrotting and focus in on what we're actually supposed to be talking about?
Can you find where I said East Germany would be the topic of this debate when we agreed to the topic of this debate?
It's about whether Rhine, so-called the social market economy, whether it's the one that existed in West Germany or the one that exists now in unified Germany, can be said to be better than Marxian socialism.
That has been broadly
can
used
be
across
said
Europe
to be
and Latin
better
America.
than Marxian socialism as regards to the people who lived under it. Stay the fuck on topic.
I don't think you're the one on topic. All right, Rhine capitalism is an economic system that has been used all across Europe and Latin America now, from Germany to the Czech Republic to Austria to the Nordic model to Peru, which is also the most fastest growing economy in Latin America right now. We didn't agree to just talk about East Germany and only talk about the opinions of certain part of the population. We're talking about the benefits to its society as a whole.
So which countries do you consider Rhine capitalism, so we can be clear about that?
I would say Czech Republic, Germany, Austria, Denmark, and Peru to be people following the Rhine capitalist model.
Only two of those are former communist states, are adjacent to communist nations. I know West Germany was not a communist state, but only two of those countries are relevant to the actual debate topic.
No, because I could still point out economic history from these people, and we could look at even in these in lesser developed places like Peru, for example, how they're doing much
When
better
did
now
Peru
they've
have a
moved onto the
communist
system.
state? When did Peru have a Marxian socialist state?
I don't believe they had a communist
So it's not
dictatorship, but we
relevant.
can
So don't
still.
talk about Peru. We can't talk about it because they didn't have fucking communism. It's very simple.
Well, we're not only talking about states who were communist and then changed to not communist. We're
You
talking about both
described
of
the
our
Czech
theories.
Republic system as Rhine capitalism. I'd like to know where you're actually getting that idea from.
They're a country that broadly they have a free market model, which broadly sees the government's job as going into the economy and not over not over regulating it, really stepping in just to improve
Yeah,
competition
that's
between different
extremely
companies.
ambiguous. When you're talking
You
about
didn't
the
let me finish.
social,
There's more stuff. Broadly also supports organized labor, not necessarily connected to the state. Denmark would also be another good example where they don't
there's
have, for instance,
yeah.
state mandates on wages. They just let the organized labor do it for
Sure.
themselves.
There's actually plenty of countries that fall under that extremely unproductive, useless, and fully ambiguous description. I see that you got your description of the social market economy from Wikipedia, which says Austria, the Czech Republic, Germany, Peru, Poland, the United Kingdom, and the United States. Or the United Kingdom and
Well,
United States.
I wouldn't add the United Kingdom, the United States, or Poland into it. So I guess I have a
So
different.
how do you know Peru is a where are you getting this idea that all of these other countries can be listen, when someone says Rhine capitalism, they're talking about Germany. They're talking about the country that the Rhine River is in.
No,
Okay?
they're talking about
There's
a theory that was developed in
Christian
Germany.
democracy had influence throughout all of Western Europe. I agree. But when you're talking about a system of Rhine capitalism, you're talking about Germany because, in contrast to those other countries, Germany is where Christian democracy actually took hold and was able to form new institutions after World War II and so on that implemented its ideas. So I don't know where you're getting this idea that countries like Peru can be qualified as Rhine
capitalism is
capitalist
called that
states.
not because it's only the capitalism that people on the Rhine use. It's called that because it was an economic theory that was developed in Germany at first under the Christian Democrats and has been expanded throughout the rest of Europe and parts of Latin America now. I also like to talk
How
about
has
Peru
it been expanded
and
to
other
Peru?
nations
I'd like to know
because
how it's been expanded to Peru.
I'm a South American unificationist. I think that America should take more control and take more of an interest in
I
Latin
don't
America.
care about your ridiculous and bizarre ideas about Latin America. Would you call Singapore and South Korea Rhine capitalist states?
No.
They also have a special connection between the state and unions and so on. I mean, most advanced developed states fall under the label of so-called Rhine capitalism as you've defined it. If you don't know.
I would say that's a point in my favor that all of these great developed states
No,
fall
it's
under my
not because
system.
there's no need to call it Rhine capitalism or Christian democracy since Christian democracy and Rhine capitalism is entirely inessential. No, South Korea and Singapore don't call themselves Rhine capitalism. So when you talk about Rhine, when you talk about Rhine capitalism, you're talking about Germany.
If it makes you feel better, I'll just use social capitalism then. Or you know what? You're a commie. I'll give you a laugh. We can call it capitalism with a human face. You should know about that,
I actually
right?
don't care what you call it. You can call it social capitalism, but if you want to change the debate to social capitalism, the scope of this debate is going to be much more extensive than it was going to be initially. I even have to change my stream title. So it's not actually about Germany. It's about the entire globe and the world over. So we have to actually cover a lot of...
Well, it'd be more about Western and Nordic Europe. I think probably.
Okay, let's be very clear. Where do you want to confine this specific debate to? Which countries?
If it makes you, we can confine it. I want to specifically talk about Czech Republic is where I would really like to talk about. Japan would be another reason, not necessarily just for.
You say Japan?
Well, that depends. If we get into a conversation about the Soviet Union's market growth, I'd want to bring up Japan because Japan grew faster.
Yeah, because that's what I want. It's the only country that ever grew faster than the Soviet Union.
Well, no, that's not true. Japan is the only country that grew faster and consistently, and also had a higher GDP per capita than the Soviet Union. There are a lot of other countries that at times had faster growth rates.
So
For
it's
instance,
the one exception.
Portugal, Ireland, all of Western Europe, all of Northern Europe had faster
What's the
growing
time? What's the
GDPs.
time period you're talking about?
This would be 1970s. This would be
Yeah.
pre-19s, from like the 60s to the 70s.
Yeah,
and
we
then
all
from the
know there was
80s to the
we all
90s.
know about the Brezhnev stagnation, so that doesn't really count. The Soviet
Well,
Union.
you can't say that. Let's not talk
Yes,
about.
I can't. No, I can say it because
talk about it.
no.
Your
You said
economy
no.
stagnated,
Shut
that
up.
would be
Shut up.
a
You
point in
said
my
it.
part.
Shut up. Shut the fuck up. You said it was a lie when communists stated that they had the highest growth in the world. Where for a long time the Soviet Union did have the highest fucking growth. It's until the Brezhnev stagnation that changed.
No, they didn't have the highest fucking growth even
until
then.
the Brezhnev stagnation. Yes.
No, they didn't have the highest fucking growth even
Name
then.
two countries that had higher growth before the Brezhnev stagnation. Go ahead.
Let's see, Spain, Ireland, and Japan.
No, it didn't.
Yes, it did.
Only Japan.
I can give you a source.
Go ahead, give me the source.
Let's see. This should be, yeah, here it is. So these actually have some really fancy colored graphs you can look at.
Where's the source?
Again, it's in the PM. Can I drop images in there?
Yeah, this is the same fucking source we talked about in the last debate. If you actually read this correctly,
I haven't debated you before, so I don't know what you're talking about.
You didn't read the fucking graphs correctly. This little thing that I'm showing on stream that's showing Portugal, Spain, and all these countries, this is not actually talking about the rate of growth. If you actually read this correctly, you're going to find that the Soviet Union was higher than everyone except Japan. Here's the actual relevant chart. I'm showing it right now on stream.
I can pull it up if you want.
It's right here, but it's you just have to control F. But what about Robert Allen's From Farm to Factory? What if we consider the USSR starting with Stalin? It's right here. And this is 28 to 70. So that's even after that.
Well, you're probably looking... Wait, are you looking at the GDP per capita? Because those are a list of nations that had a higher GDP per capita at times, but I am also...
It's not measuring the rate of growth. It's
the GDP.
Look, your source says it. Then we find the USSR was the fastest growing economy except for Japan. It's ad verbatim right there.
On one of the upper graphs, GDP growth. This is a rate of growth over time from the 30s to the 90s.
It's not the rate of growth. It is not the rate of growth. No, it's fucking not. It's just measuring the GDP over time. You don't know how to fucking read graphs. You're so stupid. Holy shit. That is not the rate of growth. It is just the growth.
It says GDP growth over time here on
multiple
different graphs.
But that's not the rate. It's not actually showing you. Do you understand math? There's a difference between showing GDP growth and showing the rate of growth. Your own fucking source admits that from 28 to 70, the USSR was the fastest growing economy except for Japan.
I understand the problem here. All right. So when I'm saying growth over time, all right. So you're right. The Soviet Union at one period of history had the fastest growing economy.
For the bulk of its history. Not one period of its history. For the bulk of its history. Let's be
not for the
clear.
bulk of its history.
Yes, it lasted 70 years, and from 28 to 70, it had the highest growth in the fucking world.
No, it didn't have the highest.
Japan.
It didn't have the highest growth until after World War II. First of all.
Listen. Your graph, your own source admits that from 1928 to 1970, it had the highest growth except for Japan. That's your source, the one you shared.
Right. So again, you'd be saying that the Soviet Union didn't have the highest growth. But again, these graphs
Japan.
are...
There's one exception.
Well, Japan is a tiny fucking country with like not even a quarter of the natural resources or the population.
Hold on. So what? Japan had a huge head start over the fucking USSR.
No, it didn't.
Japan was during the Meiji Restoration and Japan's hyper-industrialization. Yes, it did.
So you're telling me that the fucking monarchist Japan had a better system of growth than your system? Do you think that's good?
Did I say it had a better system of growth?
You just said you're saying it's not fair. We're comparing like the Meiji Restoration.
I know you don't understand logic. So
there's
two different claims, right? One is that it actually did have more growth, and the other is that it had a better system of growth. If I were to concede to you that it had a better system of growth, I would be saying that Japan grew more than the USSR because of its system. But I'm not arguing that it grew because of its system.
Why do you think it grew if not because of the system that it had? Considering that Japan was far less advantageous
I'll tell you why.
I will
tell you why. Because Japan combined a heavily state-commanded or intervened level of economic control for the specific purpose of actually achieving those growth rates. Plus, it had nearly unlimited access to foreign capital and foreign investment. So combining those two, yes, you're going to have huge rates of growth, obviously.
I would say that capitalist investment is really good. However, Japan, I would say, actually deregulated its economy. All right, it came out of.
Okay, that's
it
fine.
Came out. No, let me finish. It came out of its isolationist period. The state stopped blocking people from investing. The state stopped people. The state did away with its class system, which allowed merchants and middle class.
Please, let's not get into the Meiji Restoration. You're just wasting time. I get it. There's a Meiji Restoration.
Wait, you brought it up. I understand that you want to get off.
No, because
now that you realize it's a bad topic for you to discuss.
Dude. You need to fucking walk back what you just said, and I'll read it to you carefully. What I just said was that Japan, during the period of the USSR's growth, had a heavy-handed, state-led economy, which is true. And you said, well, technically, during the Meiji Restoration, like 80 years before in the fucking 1800s, they actually opened up. We don't want to get into the fucking history of feudal Japan and samurais and shit, dude.
Meiji Restoration.
Just fucking stay on topic. You're just fucking derailing for no reason. We don't have to talk about samurais and ninjas, dude. We don't.
We're not. First off, you agreed it was Meiji Restoration period onward. That's post-feudal Japan. We're not even talking about samurais.
I know, because that was the opening of its industrialization, and obviously, yes, it opened up to the world and it broke down all of its feudal traditions and whatever. But it was a still very state-heavy-handed industrial and economic growth.
That was an explosion for private
I'm not denying there was a huge private. I'm not saying it was a communist.
No, the biggest thing Japan
I'm not
had
saying
going for
it was a fucking
socialist
command. I'm not saying Japan was a socialist command economy. Stop fucking taking my words out of context.
I'm not saying that either. You're saying it was heavy-handed by the state.
Yes, it was. It was objectively. There was heavy-handed state intervention in the economy. Yes, there was.
Compared to the United States, yes, but Japan did the best.
Compared to every country, almost every.
No, not compared to every country.
Yes, compared to almost any country in Europe. Yes.
They stopped with the bullshit class system. They stopped with the weird regulations, how you could only trade in a couple of cities.
Listen, that's feudal Japan. It's not fucking relevant, okay? Japan, compared to Europe, had a very heavy-handed state intervention in its economy. That is a fucking fact. No one who actually argues in good faith and doesn't want to waste people's time for no fucking reason will argue against that fact. Yeah, of course the state didn't own the enterprises.
I'm not saying they owned. I'm saying you say the state
interventionism did
this.
Can
you let me finish my point? You're saying that the state was heavily interventionist.
I can't, because what you're accusing me of...
After the state stopped being so interventionist.
You are accusing me...
They allowed for more private
investment. No one gives a shit about this fake dichotomy you're creating between... So you think my actual argument here is that, oh yeah, state is good, letting go is bad. I'm not even fucking saying that. The reason I mentioned it had heavy-handed state intervention wasn't because I was trying to make a ideological point about socialism, but because of the fact that the Japanese state made it its actual intentional and specific explicit goal to industrialize the country. Ergo, it had very high rates, especially when you couple that with access, almost near unlimited access to foreign capital and being able to take advantage of those global differentials in capital. Okay, it's a really simple point, but you decided to talk about ninjas and samurais instead.
I didn't.
Really
you were the only one who said ninjas and samurais.
Yeah, because you're talking about fucking feudal Japan and the way the Meiji Restoration.
Well, I'm not. See, I want to talk
Japan.
About Japan post World War II. There's this famous anecdote where the
Conservative
Party.
What you want to talk about is
the Conservative Party won its elections in Japan for the prime ministership by promising that they would double. They would double wages within 20 years, and they managed to do it within like 8. They managed to double the wages of the average Japanese citizen.
Okay. I'm gonna. Okay, so you want to look at Japan? No, the Conservative Party promised something, and with magic fairy pixie dust, it actually accomplished it.
With capitalist investment, they accomplished it.
Here's the thing. Here's what you're missing. Okay, and this is what happens when you actually debate someone who knows about history. When you actually look at the big picture,
someday it will happen.
Shut the fuck up. Shut your fucking mouth. You don't even have a fucking cam up, and you're fucking disrespecting me like this? Show your face, dude. You want to fucking interrupt me? Show your fucking face. Second of all, that wealth and that prosperity...
I'm pretty enough, will you agree
shut the fuck up! Shut the fuck up! That wealth and prosperity you're talking about after World War II was the result of the American-designed Bretton Woods system. And it was a global system with unlimited access to the world's resources, the world's capital, the world's industrial buildup, and especially America's foreign capital investment. Everyone prospered from that fucking system. Who was in that?
You're
was
right. Everyone did
most
prosper
because
from capitalist
shut the
trade.
fuck up, because that was most of the world. That was most of the world.
Clearly not all of the world, because Africa and the Middle East were not involved.
You need to understand something.
Do I?
Yes, you do.
What do I need to understand?
Countries that have the burden of industrializing themselves from scratch without being able to take advantage of differentials in capital concentration globally, they're going to have objectively a harder time than countries that can actually participate and take advantage of those differentials. In other words, surpluses produced by initial concentrations of capital can be used to invest in other countries. Other countries can benefit from those investments, and on the process goes. So the
Why
countries
wasn't
that
the
are
Soviet Union able to invest?
Why wasn't the Soviet Union able to acquire foreign investment?
No, why weren't they able to invest in their other communist
Because
allies?
the Soviet Union had to industrialize itself from scratch. It couldn't take advantage of foreign capital in the ways that the countries you're talking about could.
Well, why didn't they? The Soviet Union specifically blocked the Eastern Bloc nations from entering the Bretton Woods system and taking loans from the West.
Because for geopolitical...
Poland, Czechoslovakia,
Do you want me to fucking answer?
All of these nations wanted to get
talking,
investment from the United States and from the West. The Soviet Union told them not to, otherwise they would be kicked out of the Red Bloc.
Keep talking. You want to talk more?
Why are you so pissy about this? Holy shit.
Because you're so fucking annoying.
I'm sorry.
You don't know how to shut your mouth.
History of economies harm me.
I didn't even hear anything you said because you interrupted me. I tuned you out, and that's what's going to keep happening. The Soviet Union didn't acquire foreign capital investment because A, it couldn't, because it was politically encircled and for political reasons excluded from the world market. The second reason is the Soviet Union wanted to have national sovereignty, and the states that would have invested in the Soviet Union would not have done so under those terms and conditions. So the Soviet Union did have the burden of industrializing its economy from scratch so it could retain actual sovereignty and actual independence and basically have its own source of industrialization rather than taking advantage of the prior and precedent forms of industrialization. Now, there's countries like China that went down a different path and took advantage of the prior forms of industrialization that happened in the West, and they used that to industrialize themselves after Deng's reforms. But the Soviet Union was not in a position to do anything like that at that time, so the Soviet Union had to carry that burden itself.
Are you done? Can you put your thumb in your mouth while I speak now?
Since you just fucking disrespected me, up your bitch. Go ahead.
All right. Okay. So the Soviet Union can blame itself for not being able to take investment because during the Reconstruction period, for 4 years after the war, America primarily and the United Kingdom basically had a no questions asked policy where they would give you basically handle your state budgets for 4 years, no questions out. You didn't even need to be indebted to them. The Soviet Union specifically blocked itself. They refused to take part in it, and then they blocked every other Eastern Bloc nation from taking part in these investments later on as well. Why would the Soviet Union block all of these other nations who weren't their own, threaten them to stop them from getting investments because of some apparent sovereignty that they would be losing, only to later on rip their own industrialization out of them to bring back to the Soviet Union and invade the fuckers anyway? Why does the Soviet Union care so much about sovereignty if it's going to traipse around the rest of Eastern Europe and fucking invade people constantly whenever they try and liberalize them? I don't think it's because they cared about sovereignty.
Okay, well, there's 3 bullet points of absolute stupidity that I just heard. The first one is that the Soviet Union was pledged to some unconditional principle of sovereignty in the abstract. I never said that, actually. I said the Soviet Union itself wanted to be sovereign. The Soviet Union didn't care about the sovereignty of other countries, which I'm going to contest. doesn't actually say anything about my initial point that the Soviet Union wanted its own sovereign industrialization. The second bullet point of stupidity is that if you think that the only reason the Soviet Union exited Bretton Woods is for some ideological or irrational reason, you just don't fucking know anything about Bretton Woods and all of the strings that were attached to the American global monetary system. The Soviet Union didn't want to be part of Bretton Woods or America's plans for the world because the Soviet Union didn't believe that it was a fair political division of power globally. It gave too much political power to America. And yes, for purposes of sovereignty, the Soviet Union did not want to enter into it. As for the Soviet Union preventing all of these other European countries from entering it, the actual political relationship between the Soviet Union as a center and the communist parties that took power in the Eastern European states is much more subtle than you're trying to say, as though the Soviet Union was directly commanding them. Obviously, there was a central will that was coming from
No,
Moscow.
it was not that
Shut
subtle.
the fuck up! Shut the fuck up!
It wasn't subtle.
Shut
You're
your
lying.
fucking
First
mouth.
off, they invaded
Shut your
Czechoslovakia and
fucking-
Hungary over market liberalization.
Shut.
The Communist Party of Poland.
Shut the fuck. Can you
Hungary,
mute this fucking
literally,
idiot?
the
Can you mute
communist
this
parties
fucking
of the
guy?
Eastern
Just
Bloc
mute him.
kept having
Mute
to
this
go back to
fucking idiot.
Moscow to get permission
Literally
every time
mute
they wanted
this
to do
dipshit.
economic
I'm not gonna
plan.
let you say anything. The audience doesn't fucking hear anything you're saying. Shut your fucking mouth. When it came to there was another two bullet points of stupidity. How did the communist parties seize power in Europe? Obviously, it was because of World War II. That's no one's contesting.
No, that was not true. The communist parties, in many countries, they literally just did a coup threatening the democratic establishments of the countries that if they did not give the communist parties undue government power, the Soviet Union would invade them. They did the coup in Czechoslovakia.
Because of World
they did
War
the coup
II.
in
Because of
Czechoslovakia.
World War II.
They did the coup in Rome. No, this is after
So
World
you're
War II.
running away
This
from
is
the debate.
after
You're running
no,
away from the debate.
I'm not running away from the
Yes,
debate.
you
This is
fucking
after
are.
World War
Because
II.
I'm not done
After
actually.
the first, these are after some of the first elections of
You
these
fucking
nations,
interrupted
after
me
the
mid-sentence because you're a fucking pussy and you don't want to fucking hear me fuck your skull. So you fucking interrupted me so I couldn't finish
You're
my
lying.
fucking point. So you could go on your stupid fucking tangent. Shut the fuck
You're
up.
lying. This is not the Soviets had some state control because of
No
World War
one
II.
hears what
This is
you
them
are
after
saying. No
coming.
one
This
hears
is them
what you
coming
are
at-
saying.
this is
Shut
the
the fuck up.
Soviet
Shut the
Union.
fuck up. Shut
These
the
are
fuck up.
communist
Shut
parties
the
who are-
fuck up. Shut the fuck up.
who are
Shut the fuck
committing
up.
coups.
Shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck up.
Like
Shut the
in the-
fuck
in
up.
the late
Shut the
40s
fuck
and
up.
early
Shut the
50s
fuck up.
and
Shut the
60s
fuck
at
up.
some
Shut the
points.
fuck up. Shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck up. How many fucking times have you fucking interrupted me? Midpoint, you fucking interrupt me. Where the fuck
should
does the
calm down.
audacity
You're going
for
to
that
get- you're
fucking
going to
come
get,
from?
like-
Who the fuck
you're gonna
are
get
you,
some
huh?
fucking complaints
Shut the
from your
fuck up.
neighbors.
Shut your fucking mouth. You don't even let me finish my fucking point. Is anyone moderating this? Can we just take turns and I can speak and
We
speak?
can. Yeah, we can move it
Yeah.
into that if it's
Please,
not going to
please let me
divulge.
finish my point.
What do you
Can
guys want
mute
to
him?
come up with? Go ahead. We'll mute him. You finish your point, then we'll pass
Let me
it back.
finish my point. What an annoying fucking. Okay, so the reason I said the communist parties acquired power in Eastern Europe as a result of World War II was because the Soviet Union invaded those countries to reach Germany, to reach Berlin. Okay, so that was World War II. And as a result, the Soviet occupation made it easier for communist parties to acquire power. Now, the details of how they acquired power, I don't care to talk about it because it's not relevant right now. There's so much we have to get to first. But I agree, it wasn't simply because of some impartial democracy or whatever will of the people. Yeah, it was because of World War II and the Soviet invasion. I'm not fucking denying that. But it's a myth to think that it was a form of direct control from the Kremlin to these communist states. I mean, to these communist parties. It's just not how it fucking worked. There was an implicit understanding that the Soviet Union was in charge and it was the leader. But these communist parties had a degree of autonomy and had a degree of sovereignty. One of the important reasons why some of these states, were forced into these economic agreements with the USSR is because the Soviet Union believed that it was owed reparations because many of these countries participated in the invasion of the USSR alongside the Germans. The third thing is something you mentioned. I forgot what I was going to say even before. Oh, yeah, the thing about Bretton Woods. You're saying the Soviet Union forced these countries to not allow them to sign the agreements to Bretton Woods. But since these countries are already compromised by communist coups anyway, what does that even matter? Can you show evidence that the communist states wanted to join Bretton Woods? And furthermore, it's dubious to claim that all of these communist states were a result of direct coups and Soviet intervention and otherwise wouldn't have been able to acquire power, because there's clear examples of communist states throughout the history after World War II who broke with the Soviet Union. Romania actually is a great example of that. Yugoslavia is a clear example of that, and Albania is an example, and there's probably some I'm missing or something. But yeah, another thing that I finally wanted to get to is you said something extremely stupid about Hungary. You said that the reason for the Soviet intervention in 56 in Hungary was because the Soviet Union didn't want Hungary to have a liberal market economy. The Soviet Union didn't give a shit about what kind of economic system the Hungarians wanted to adopt. What the Soviets were worried about was that Hungary was going to go over to the West. So it was all geopolitics. They didn't give a shit what kind of fucking economic system they have. And the evidence of this is the fact that after the events of 56, a much more moderate communist government acquired power in Hungary, and they did implement a degree of marketization and whatever relative to other communist states, especially the Soviet Union. Actually, if you look at the variance of the how these systems across the communist states in Eastern Europe were different, you'll realize that this idea that there's just one type of state control, so it's a complete bullshit. Almost all of these countries had a private sector, they had private industries, and the picture you're trying to paint is completely inaccurate. Okay,
all right, yeah. Now go ahead. You got Bretton Woods.
So
you got all that
how
stuff.
long are you going to let him rant? Can I speak now? All right, make sure
go
he's
ahead.
fucking
You
muted.
got it. Yep, you got it. Floor is yours.
All right. So I understand that he wouldn't want to get into the details of communist leadership or communists taking power in Eastern Europe, because largely the history of communism in most of the world, but especially in Eastern Europe, has been completely anti-democratic, has been forced from the top down onto the workers who are unwilling to do so. Some of these details we can get into. In 1948, time that I know very well, the Communist Party of Czechoslovakia carried out a coup specifically backed by Moscow over the democratic state of Czechoslovakia, though they only got between 20 and 30% of the vote in their previous elections, which is, granted, the highest percentage of popular support any communist group has ever gotten when putting it up to an actual free election. So fair enough on them. Instead of engaging with the other people who are also democratically elected by the workers, instead of engaging in the democratic system, because apparently these people who think they represent the masses are so afraid to actually let the workers have democratic say in things, they couped against the democratic state, overthrew it, locked up and assassinated and tortured and murdered their political opponents and turned it into a backwards dictatorship. In Bulgaria, it was the same story. The Communist Party failed in the elections. They got support from Moscow. Moscow acquiesced, even offered them military support if the coup did not go well. And the Bulgarian Communist Party took control of the state, locked up their political opponents, and had them shot. They, for a moment, allowed the small landowning party, a peasant party, to mold with the Communist Party to form some sort of popular left coalition government. But a few years later, they even executed the more liberal members of their own party. In Romania, the Communist Party absolutely failed their democratic elections, and so they got with acquiescence from Moscow. They threatened the monarch to give them more, to take over the government. They threatened the fucking monarch of Romania to take over the government, to do away with the elected results, and to give the communists more power in parliament. And a few years later, they were also couped as well. In Poland, the Communist Party did miserably. They actually begged the Soviet Union not to invade them because they thought they could have a nice election. Now, this is a fun fact that while the Soviet Union was pushing through Poland, a country they attacked without provocation, engaged in genocide against, helped the Nazis invade, and while they were fighting the Nazis, they were engaged in a guerrilla war with the Poles before the Nazis were even defeated, because they wanted to stamp out Polish national pride. The Polish communists did so abysmally in the elections they had to go out through a second round of voting with the Communist Party stuffing ballots and intimidating voters, and they even failed then. So with acquiescence from the communist state, they couped the government, started rounding up political opponents, started shooting people. This is the history of communism in Eastern Europe. Now, with regards to some of the other economic developments and stuff, countries that specifically wanted to gain Western economic development, they wanted some investments, were Poland, the Baltic states, and Hungary. All specifically wanted more economic development from the West because they weren't getting it from their fellow communists. Because as much as it's supposed to be this sort of unified utopian bloc, they really fucking destroyed each other. It's hardcore game theory there. The Soviet Union did not give them permission and even blocked them from going into negotiations over international policy with the United States until the Soviet Union was specifically involved. A good example I like to use so far as development is the success of Czechoslovakia after the fall of communism. Now, Czechoslovakia is an interesting example. After the fall of communism, a lot of this happened mostly because the Soviet Union finally came out and said that we are not going to be invading other countries if they start to liberalize. You guys have to defend yourself. And so most of these communist parties did a sneaky thing. They opened up free elections, and then they went through this long process of rehabilitation as this actually very pro-democratic liberal party. In Czechoslovakia, that didn't happen. In Czechoslovakia, the Communist Party refused to modernize and refused to develop over time. They remained the Communist Party of old. They've been kept out of all coalitions at this point because they're persona non grata for the absolute misery they've reaped on the population. But because of that, Czechoslovakia has had a unique position as being able to develop their economy and their government, their systems of democracy, without any intervention from the old order. They've been able to completely remake their system. And because of that, their education, their life expectancy, their economic development has increased fivefold, even though they split from Slovakia. So a smaller nation was able to do much better than the communists were, just through market liberalization, more democracy, and independent trade unions of the workers, which is what I'm advocating for, which is much better than you've ever been able to offer anyone.
Okay, so back to you, Haj. You got a lot there. 1948's Czech, Bulgaria, Romania,
we actually
Poland.
got a lot going on. So I find it really peculiar. So in terms of the political history of the communist states in Europe, you are able to air all of their dirty laundry and all of the horrible, bad parts of the history, while ignoring the good, of course, within the time span of an online debate. But if I were to air the dirty laundry of the West, I couldn't fit it in the time span of a debate. It would take days, it would take weeks, it would probably take months, right? I have to talk about Operation Gladio, all of the coups orchestrated by the UK and the US and all that bullshit going on. I wouldn't even have time to exhaust the list. You know, so the very fact that you had time to say all of that really shows that you really don't have much. Another thing, though, is that let's go point by point by what I was able to capture from your unconstrained rant. So you claim that the communists seized power in the form of coups. Well, this is an extremely misleading thing to say because the states that the communists couped, right, were discerning whether they actually had the will of the people behind them is extremely difficult because of the wartime conditions. In times of war, especially when you're invaded by a foreign power, the legitimacy of a state breaks down. So these chaotic conditions do not allow for a situation in which you can establish some kind of liberal democratic system in order to decide which party or whatever should take power. And mind you, many of these countries, Romania and Bulgaria included, participated in the Axis invasions of the USSR. They were conquered and invaded by the USSR as a result. So the situation is nowhere near as neat and clear as, oh, these were flourishing democracies, and the communists came and just took them over at the expense of the will of the people. Well, the will of the people was not actually clear whatsoever. You said the communists did very poorly in the elections that they held. Well, I don't actually know which specific elections you're referring to because you didn't actually cite anything. On some of those counts, like in the case of Poland, there was a election in Poland in 1947, and the communists came out on top. I don't know what actually you're talking about. So, but that aside, um, the idea that liberal democracy is the sole or even exclusive vehicle by which the actual will of a people can be discerned and tested and discovered, I would contest that view, especially in the circumstances of a wartime economy. But to be quite frank with you, I frankly don't give a shit about democracy. I don't think states acquire their legitimacy from asking the consent of the people. A state could not possibly arise in that way whatsoever. What actually matters is the extent to which people tolerated those states, and the people participated in overthrowing them. Now, let's see. Yeah, you mentioned it, the Czech coup, the Romania coup, and the Bulgaria coup. You don't have time to go into the details and the circumstances of all of those separate situations. But I find it really funny that you're just throwing as much shit against the wall as you can to wait and to see until something sticks. Um, Listen, when I said we don't have time to go into detail about these things, you interpreted that as, oh, this is your Achilles heel. You're scared to talk about this dirty history. No, it's just that A, I didn't come prepared to talk about those very specific historical events and all of the details surrounding them. And B, even if I did, it's too much ground to fucking cover anyway. You're not actually staying on topic about what the actual topic was initially about. And furthermore, it's really this is the crux, I guess, of the lie of what series of lies you just spewed when you said that the Soviet Union invaded Poland unprovoked. Excuse me? Are you trying to say that after Poland was invaded by the Nazis and the Soviet Union had to protect its eastern front, that this was an unprovoked invasion of Poland? Excuse me. Are you trying to say that when Poland signed a non aggression pact with Nazi Germany in 1934, and signed a treaty, with Nazi Germany in 1934, that this didn't signal the fact that the Soviet Union had an unprotected eastern front? Excuse me, are you denying the fact that Poland stole Soviet land during the Civil War and engaged in a tyrannical rule against ethnic minorities that welcomed the Soviets with open arms? Excuse me, are you trying to say that the Soviet Union engaged in a genocide against the Polish people? A lie so outlandish and ridiculous, not even the most fervent anti communist historians have the gall to say something like that? Finally, you talk about the success of Czechoslovakia, which is extremely interesting, actually, because Czechoslovakia might just be the only country in Europe that you can find a degree of success and a degree of let's say, succession from the communist era that satisfies the population that actually lived under communism. But the truth is that for the overwhelming majority of ex communist states in Europe, the infrastructure, the fundamental means of production, the factories, even institutions, the culture, and the way of life was inherited from the communist era, and capitalism has been proven to be unable to replace those. If so-called European capitalism is so great, why are they still using the infrastructure created under the communists? Why can't they create their own infrastructure adapted to the modern times? Why have they become colonies of Germany and Western Europe, riddled with debt and purposefully underdeveloped to the benefit of German industry and at the expense of their own industries? Why is it that there is such a high degree of nostalgia and positive views among the people who actually lived under communist states to this day in Eastern Europe? Why is it that to this day, a measure of right wing populism, widespread discontent, and social ills is almost directly correlated with the fall of communism? For example, in East Germany, you'll find the rise of right wing populism in the same place. Now, you attribute this to the so called desolation and ravaging that the communists did in the 20th century, but the data doesn't actually back up any desolation or ravaging. The data backs up extremely high rates of growth, the providing of a basic level of dignity and a standard of living, which admittedly um, ended in crisis. But that crisis did not comprise, the crisis resulting from the Brezhnev stagnation, to clarify which one. But that crisis, specific economic crisis, didn't comprise the majority of life under those communist states. And that's why, even for people who endured and lived under those crises, they still remember life under communism rather fondly.
Okay.
Good, Cat.
Oh yeah, I feel like he's getting way more time than me. Holy
Well,
shit!
why don't we?
Well, we're not timing. Yeah.
Well,
we're
why
just
don't we
going
do
back
it like
and forth.
where we'll have 2 minutes.
Oh no, two. You don't give me 2 minutes after that bullshit. All right, I need a lot more time to go over all of that
Okay.
sort of stuff.
All right. Well, then
Holy
after that, and then after that, you guys both have long rants, and we can go back to 2 minutes.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
So starting with two of the more egregious things he said, I'd like to start with the fact that he thinks you don't actually need democracy to represent the people. And this other statement he made about states getting their legitimacy by placating the people with material goods. Oddly materialistic and I would say capitalistic of him. But I would say this is language I don't understand. In my view, as a Christian Democrat, as an economic and social and a political liberal, at least socially conservative, I believe that the only right any state has to exist is the right is given to it by the consent of the people that it exists over. I find it interesting, and I think it's telling that the communist here is saying that we don't actually need multi-party democracy to understand the will of the people. We don't actually need their opinion. We just need to placate them. This is a language of fascism. Which is why I think that communism is in true form. Fascism is just honest communists. Communists wish they could be as effective as the fascists in taking state power. Now, maybe I don't understand this language because Christian democracy never had to be forced onto anyone with a bayonet the way communism had to be. And my people, the people of Germany, of Austria, of Denmark, Peru, although you don't like me bringing up Latin America, they voted for my beliefs. They continue to vote for my beliefs, and they will probably continue to vote for my beliefs in the future. And Czechoslovakia, during the Velvet Revolution, where they did not dismantle the Communist Party like they did in other states, the Communist Party was simply allowed to take place in the open and free election. The Communists lost, and they continue to lose. They are persona non grata insofar as coalition building. Nobody wants to touch them, and a tiny minority of the population votes for them compared to all of these other political parties that are newer and are less established. A few other things. I understand that you're very mad every time I bring up the actual particulars of how communists have actually behaved when they've taken state power. If I was a communist, I wouldn't want to talk about communists' history either, because that history is of totalitarianism, is of genocide, is incredibly bloody, and is a time period where the rest of the world, at least in Western Europe, had sort of moved on from that. While Western Europe was more focused on commercial goods for its citizens, on healthcare, on creating better education systems, and creating entertainment, the Soviet Union was still trying to mass murder people and figure out how to placate the masses. So they, unlike Ceausescu, wouldn't be thrown out in the streets and shot like a bitch, the way they deserved. Now, one of the worst things I think you spoke about overall was the odd genocide denial for the Poles. Now, first off, you talk about the Soviet Union as if you don't remember the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. The Soviet Union sided with the Nazis. The Soviet Union offered oil, rubbers, and other necessary materials for the German war effort, and in a roundabout way, the Germans would return that favor by offering them weapons, which they would then use to genocide the Poles, along with the Nazis. It was so bad that the Soviet Union, when the Katyn massacre was found, where a number of other massacres were also found by the Western powers, tried to blame it on the Nazis. And luckily, through international courts and through historians and data collectors, we figured out who really murdered all of those innocent people. The Poles were genocided by the Soviet Union. It was a small genocide. It was calculated to try and take away the national spirit of the Polish people. It was called the Polish Operation. Within the Soviet Union, before the war with Poland, in which the Soviet Union and Nazi Germany took sides to bully a smaller power, they began to round up, torture, and execute ethnic Poles within the Soviet Union. The death rate, the number of deaths are not exactly known because a lot of that we'll never know because of where they were buried. We won't ever figure it out. But the estimated number of deaths are somewhere between 200 to 400,000 Polish civilians murdered within the Soviet Union proper, and then when the Soviet Union invaded Poland, killed within their own country by the NKVD and various other organs of the communist state. This was murder, ethnically based, because the Soviets wanted to crush the national spirit of smaller powers that they wanted to invade. I think it's disgusting that you deny this genocide happened, and I think it's weird that you act as if Poland was deserving some sort of retributive genocide from the Soviet Union, when the Soviet Union, out of Poland and the Soviet Union was far more a partner with Nazi Germany. They gave them oil, rubber, they helped rebuild the German military when the Germans were trying to secretly rebuild their air force and their tanks. The Soviet Union made deals within the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact to not only divide up Poland, but the rest of Eastern Europe and the Baltic states. The Soviet Union, days before they were invaded by Nazi Germany, sent deals to Hitler asking him if he could engage in a co-invasion of Turkey, the same way that they did the Poles. I understand that you would lie about this because it does make communists look bad, but I would say that this is simply the natural alliance between two ideologically very similar groups, the fascists and the socialists. In fact, I mean, the Marxist socialists teaming up with the fascist socialists to ethnically cleanse regions and take them for their own is not surprising at all. I guess we can go back to the back and forth now.
All right.
No, I have to respond to all of that now. I actually have 10 bullet points. I'll just go through it. I'll try to be quick. So, wow. So I guess we're moving on. So you said it's oddly materialistic and capitalistic of me. I don't know. Newsflash: we Marxists are materialists. I don't know why you're saying that's some kind of irony. I don't really care about your LARP Christian democracy cope. Christian democracy is a phrase that has relevance in certain European countries. If you think Christian democracy is going to save Romania, good luck. You say that you're spouting some dogmatic political philosophy bullshit about legitimacy of of states and political legitimacy. This is all prejudice of 18th century liberalism, which is fully outdated as of now. Obviously, states cannot acquire their legitimacy from some kind of election because it's a chicken and the egg question. It begs the question of where that state came from. No state ever came into being because someone went around asking people what they want to vote on. States come into being by means of violence. That is how every state in the history of mankind came into being. Certain states are so-called multi-party democracies where the population takes turns voting on which group of thieves and corrupt ruling class representatives are going to con them and scan them. But the fundamental foundation of statehood remains intact. Okay. Now, you accuse me of using the language of fascism when I say this. Well, I have a question for you. Did fascists seize power in communist states or liberal democratic states? After all, Weimar Germany was a multi-party liberal democracy. A multi-party liberal democracy, mind you, that the Christian Democrats actually had a party within. The conservatives in Germany, Hindenburg, were the ones who enabled Hitler and allowed Hitler to come to power in Germany. So for you to accuse communists of being the same as fascists begs the question of why it is that fascists can only manage to come to power in liberal democratic countries. You mentioned Peru as an example of people voting for your beliefs. Peru just voted for a self-proclaimed Marxist-Leninist, Pedro Castillo. F's in the chat. We know communists lose elections in Eastern Europe. There's reasons for that go far beyond reasons you gave. And no, the particulars of how communists behave that you're saying I'm trying to cover up, as you've mentioned them, are very specific to post-war Europe. F's in the chat for that one. You're talking about more totalitarianism, genocide, and authoritarianism and everything. Anything you say about the communist states has nothing on the history of European imperialism and American imperialism, especially during the Cold War, where America backed several coups and ruthless military dictatorships and genocides in the name of stopping communism. Give me a break. And 6, what forms of mass murder can you refer to after the 50s? You claim the Soviet Union was defined by that after World War II. I would love to see you refer to actual examples. talk about the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. That was in 1939. That was after all of the Western powers rejected non-aggression treaties with the USSR. It had to resort as a last resort to buy itself time. The Soviet Union was not prepared to go to war with Nazi Germany in 1939. It buying time for itself is not the same as enabling and joining in an alliance with the Nazis. As for the claim about them trying to divide Europe, this is an extremely misleading claim. They weren't trying to divide Europe to control it. They were trying to secure borders and frontiers from invasions. In other words, they were trying to negotiate with the Germans about which countries they can and can't invade. It has nothing to do with the Soviet Union seizing power. The Katyn massacre, even if it was perpetrated by the Soviet Union, and this is contested by some scholars like Professor Grover Furr, is not an example of a genocide. It targeted the Polish intelligentsia not because they were Polish, but because they had a specific relation to the prior Polish state. You claim that Poles were rounded up, tortured, and executed. Soviet Union. This is just a plain lie, substantiated and baseless. You say the death toll is 400,000 or something, or 200,000, also 100% made up. The Turkey allegations need to be substantiated with evidence. And now you're saying that communists and fascists have an alliance. I have a question for you. Who supported the fascists in Europe and America? Who was more likely to support fascism, communists or Christian Democrats at the time? The truth is that liberals and conservatives and right-wingers and nationalists all across Europe enabled and implicitly or explicitly supported fascism against the so-called communist menace. That is actually the facts that are on the record. Thank you very much.
Insofar as fascism only being able to take hold in liberal democracies, I would say that's false. The Weimar Republic was the only liberal democracy that fascism took control of. The fascists in Italy took control of a monarchy. The fascists in Spain took control of a monarchy. The fascists in Japan took control of a monarchy. The fascists in Austria, well, there wasn't really a democracy in Austria before the fascists took control of it. I would say that's a bad point, because whether or not the fascists took control of one liberal democracy, it was the liberal democracies that eventually bound together and destroyed fascism. There's a lot of other shit. So the borders thing for justification of the invasion of Poland and then the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. For people that were so worried about German aggression, it's weird that they continuously sent Germany military equipment, oil, rubber, industrial steel, factory equipment, even helped train German tankists and build German tanks within the Soviet Union proper, within their organization. And the Soviet Union was only doing this until the communists could reign and liberate the people that the Germans would occupy. Why then, as a good faith effort, did the Soviet Union round up Jews and other communists who had fled Nazi Germany to Poland, round them up and send them to Hitler to be executed in the death camps as a show of good faith and cooperation? If they were only worried about self-defense, why didn't they help the Poles during the invasion and not kill Polish soldiers and kill Polish civilians? The only reason the Western powers didn't want a special mutual defense treaty with the Soviet Union is because other states which had made up these sorts of unions with the Soviet Union, Romania was an example, Hungary was an example. Every other time the Soviet Union did this, they used it as a pretense to steal land from these people. You mentioned that Poland stole land from Russia. Are you really so bent and are you really that pissy over the Polish-Soviet War, where the Soviet Union spent its time invading other countries? Again, they do this a lot, invading all of the other countries of Eastern Europe unprovoked because they wanted to stop these other nations from breaking off of Tsarist Russia and declaring their own independent republics. Are you just really pissy that they got their asses handed to them from all of these tinier nations? I mean, that's the fault of communism purging itself so often. There's a whole lot of other stuff. There's, I don't know. It seems weird that you keep ranting about how you don't actually need the people's say to actually lead the people. I would say that, yes, it is fascist language to claim that you somehow know the will of the people and you can lead them and you can be the most democratic organ of state power, but you don't actually need a democracy. They don't actually have to vote on it. That's very odd to me. But again, I come from a background of of Democrats, of people who wanted to expand voting rights to the oppressed, to expand protections to those people, expand human rights. I myself am part Roma. I have no love for the old empires of Europe. They really fucked with us. There's a reason why there aren't any gypsies in France anymore. Again, whataboutism to the entire history of Europe since BC up until the Soviet Union. I mean, there's going to be a lot of shit there. What I'm saying is that the Soviet Union or communists should have at least known better if you're claiming to be a better people and claiming to be able to better offer people better lives under your system. I would say that, again, the monarchist history of Europe was shitty. However, Christian Democrats and other Democrats helped rebuild Europe after European Reconstructionism under true democracies. And they were able to do it, and they were able to do it, and they were able to give people better lives, better educations, better health. They were able to connect them to the wider world in a way that communism has never been able to do.
Okay, back to you, Haas.
Okay, let's go. Weimar Republic was not the only country because Italy wasn't an absolute monarchy. It was a constitutional monarchy. Yet another lie. Spain was also not an absolute monarchy in the time, but even if it was, the whole Spanish Civil War resulted from the conditions of Spain becoming a republic. That's where the fascist reaction came from. But after Franco took power, actually, it's kind of ambiguous to call Spain fascist. I think it would be contested. The fascist Falange Party didn't actually take power. And the only evidence you need that the Soviets were worried about German aggression is that that's all they ever talked about for most of the 1930s after Hitler took power. And it's proven by their attempt to form security alliances with France and the UK. And Poland too, by the way. Why would they fucking do that if they weren't scared of German aggression or they didn't anticipate German aggression? Clearly they did. The reason the Soviet Union had to engage in trade with the Germans after the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact is because A, they needed the materials, because guess what? Those same materials and goods they were getting from Germany also bolstered their military too. And they also needed to buy time because, again, the Soviet Union was not prepared in 1939 to confront the German menace. The Soviet Union sent political prisoners back, but this was a combination of prisoner exchanges with the Germans, as well as paranoia about foreign spies, saboteurs, and members of the Trotskyist ring of whatever agents. Whether they were correct or not, the reason was because they thought many of these people were spies. It wasn't because they collaborated with the Nazis and liked Nazis. These people probably would have been executed anyway, and some of them actually were executed, by the way. You're saying that the reason France and the UK didn't want to enter into a security alliance with the Soviet Union was because the Soviet Union stole land from people. What fucking land was the Soviet Union going to steal from France or the UK? They don't even share a border. It doesn't even make any sense. The Polish-Soviet War wasn't because of Soviet aggression. That's a plain lie. It was because they were invaded by almost every major power on Earth, including Poland, who were trying to take advantage of the Soviet Union situation at the time. Your stupid liberal theories about political legitimacy are completely meaningless. It's not about knowing what the people's will is beforehand. It's about participating in the question of the people's will in a way more fundamental and a way deeper than just holding formal elections. People's will is out there, and whoever can best represent it will acquire power. Power is its ability to seize power and hold power is also a measure of the consent of the governed. And your Christian Democrat cope is meaningless to me. I just have one question for you. Why didn't they help Romania, which remains extremely underdeveloped to this day?
I find it funny that you're calling me Cope and a LARPer when you're defending the Soviet Union, a failed dictatorship which collapsed over 20 years ago, and you're joking at me while I'm representing economic theories which helped reconstruct Western Europe, which I think is still around. Hey, don't interrupt me, motherfucker. Well, I would say the Christian Democrats are helping Europe. Germany and the EU has been giving a lot of investment and loans to Romania to help them build their educational system, to help build their infrastructure. It's been helping Romania a lot in the past 10 years. The EU has been really good in that way, and it's also been really good at helping citizens from those countries who have the ability, who may not necessarily have the opportunity in those nations, to go abroad and to further their education and have a better life for themselves. I wasn't raised in Romania. Luckily, I was adopted. I was an orphan in Bucharest. I don't know where my background is from, but I was adopted by a Christian charity and I got to grow up in the United States, and I'm going for my master's now. It's probably a better life I have here than I would have had in Romania, thanks to the commies. This weird might makes right philosophy, I assume it's because Marx is a Hegelian. But again, this just sounds like fascism to me. We take power. He who takes power actually represents the will of the people. I don't believe that's true. I think humanity has moved past tribal conflict where whoever has the most sticks and can boop the other people on the snoots more is the one who's most correct. I think that as human beings who've gotten logic and reason and empathy from Christ, is able to, or are able to come up with better systems of representation than he who has power gets to rule. There's a lot of other shit. The going back and forth on the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. Obviously, the Soviet Union is just going to say, "Well, we had to." Because nobody's going to fully admit that they sided with the Nazis simply because it was more economically feasible for them to do so. I always thought that socialists put, human rights and morals over economic increases in GDP and shit like that. But I guess you guys are just as bad as the neoliberals then. Again, you call me cope. You say I keep coping a lot, but I mean, I can fall back on economies like Germany and Austria, Denmark, Czechoslovakia, well, the Czech Republic, they broke apart, as examples for the future. And I would say if you look at the voting patterns of people, more and more people are looking for a society where there's more democracy, there's more transparency in the government, they have more of a say in the government, or they want more independent trade unions. And the people are obviously looking for better spiritual health as well. This experimentation with like complete neoliberal atheism has been a complete failure since the 80s and 90s, and people are obviously harming for it, but that's why people are returning to God. Not necessarily through the Catholic Church, but then again, they would say I'm a heretic anyway. I'm agnostic. I'm a Gnostic Christian, and we're some weird Coptic sect that they don't necessarily like very much. I mean, you can laugh about me coping as much as you want, but you will always be some weird guy ranting on the internet about a failed dictatorship that murdered millions of innocent people. And I can always be the guy who's saying, well, my people vote for me. I didn't have to force them. I didn't have to roll tanks over anyone to get them to vote for center-right political parties that were open to organized labor and follow Christian ethics. In fact, I think the socialists in Spain you were talking about earlier, were heavily based off of liberation theology, which is something that we share in common. The Christian Democrats and the Spanish Catholic socialists believed in a form of liberation theology where we believe that human beings, as creations of God, have a right to self-determination and have a right to dignity. You obviously don't believe they have a right to dignity because you're a communist and you think the only right they have is to be talked down to by whoever has the most guns, which I would say is a very bleak view on the world. I would say it's also telling that the chat right now is filled with a bunch of people with hammers and
wrap it up.
and socialist icons in their names talking about how autocracy is nice. But then again, I guess that's the crowd that you communists bring, people who like autocracy and hate the worker.
Yeah, and we are going to be getting to Q&A soon, so but go ahead.
This will be the last one?
Yeah, and we will also have closing statements and final thoughts after Q&A.
Sure, that's good.
But go ahead.
So, first, the Christian Democrats didn't rebuild Europe. America did in the American Bretton Woods system. America was untouched by the war. The only country that grew during the war, so that's a complete... Romania remains poor and underdeveloped. Romanians don't agree with you, and they're migrating and fleeing at record rates, voting with their feet. Romania has not been bad. Maybe a small minority of Romanians are, though. I didn't say, actually, that might makes right. You're making assumptions about my so-called political philosophy and putting words in my mouth. All I said is that not everything outside of liberalism is fascism. And I also said the state does not acquire its being. It doesn't come into being as a result of being voted in. In order to have a system of so-called multi-party democracy, you have to take as its premise violent state dictatorship, which is an objective fact. It's not saying that might makes right. It just means that actual will and consent of the people is a much more complicated relationship with statehood, what can be measured at ballot boxes. There's a more fundamental basis of statehood than democracy. It's not the same as saying might is stuff you said about logic and reason coming from Christ. I don't know why you're preaching at me. Not interested. You said so Regarding the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, I'm just going to assume, since you've ignored all of the arguments that I forwarded to demonstrate that indeed the Soviet Union did not collaborate with Nazi Germany because they sided with the Nazis or had something. I'm just going to assume you're conceding my point. You can't fall upon the economies you mentioned, Germany, Austria, Denmark, because those countries have never actually replicated their systems in non-Western countries. It's only Western European countries under the auspices of the American Union and Euro-American imperialism that you can have those kinds of specific economies. And Germany specifically is a peculiar example because the idea that Germany came into being because of elections is a fucking lie. Germany's fate was decided by the victors of World War II. Germany didn't even have a say in it. So it's really stupid. Again, why haven't they saved Romania? Again, your people didn't vote for you. It's complete shit. The question is, which Spanish? I had last question. What Spanish liberation theology socialists are you talking about? You're talking about Latin America, not Spain. Clarify what you mean.
Let's see, responding to all of that. You keep bringing up, why haven't you saved Romania? I can't help that the Romanians aren't following my particular, mostly Western economic ideology. I have been saying, of course, that the Eurozone has probably been doing more for Romania than the Soviets ever did. At least they're getting investment, they're getting funds to go to education, to improve their healthcare, and to improve their country as a whole. And it's a working process. They've only been independent since 1989. It's when they shot Ceausescu, deservedly. So we'll just have to wait to the future. Things are picking up in Eastern Europe. The Baltic states are doing particularly well. As I mentioned in the very beginning of this debate, there are plenty of nations ranging from the Czech Republic to Slovakia to Hungary to a number of other ones which are happy with the move to multi-party democracy, which believe that their lives are getting better under this new system. There are issues. Again, as I said earlier, the communist regimes have permanently scarred these places. They will probably almost always be behind all of the nations that did not have to suffer under the totalitarian boot of communism. But we can't really help that. You are the guys who turned them into dictatorship shitholes in the first place. You can't be blamed on that. We can't be blamed for that. That's not our fault. We weren't there. If we were in charge, it wouldn't have happened. Why hasn't it been reproduced in other non-Western European countries? Well, technically it has. Denmark's a northern European country, not a Western one, and Denmark was an imperial territory of the Swedish Empire for most of its history. And barring the brief times they were also invaded by the Prussians. Canada is not a Western European place. That's also a colony, and they've been doing very well there. And I would say that while they don't necessarily fall under Christian democracy, these sort of liberal markets open to private investment, but also open to humane labor laws and organized labor, has been doing well for Canada as well. America seems to be opening up to it as well, and we'll see within the next 10 to 15 years on how well the Democrats do in future elections. Maybe the Democrats pull through and they get rid of these idiots in the squad and they take on a more realistic, more in line with Christian democracy, more in line with Rhine capitalist system of, working on capitalism with the workers having a better say in it through organized labor, not just the state coming down. I understand you get pissy about all of this.
Go off topic. So the squad.
You asked me a lot of things, and I understand that you get bored because the only thing you can talk about is your meme soon-to-be great Soviet Union nation that collapsed a few years ago. The real world is boring and hard to talk about.
This is debate-free jazz. You just say anything that stumbles on your mind. One, I can't help. What you're saying about the Eurozone is total bullshit. Romania remains an underdeveloped colony, and it's only been 30 years. That's literally like half the lifespan of the communist states. That's a really long time. Yikes. Saying that, yeah, generally what you're saying about Eastern Europe is bullshit. I don't care what the poll is telling you. People around are not. The final thing is that I don't know, is this like a comedy now? You're saying Denmark, Canada, and America aren't part of the West and the European civilization. Yikes, I don't know what to say. I think that one speaks for itself.
Well, you said Western Europe. Denmark is Northern Europe.
I
Canada is
said
part of the
Western and
Americas.
European country. I said.
Western and European countries. Okay.
So should we get to the Q&A now? Let's do that. Okay. All right. So let me read the super chats first. From Tyler Durden, what's a better measure of economic success, GDP or utility?
I think GDP per capita and purchasing power and levels of education are probably a better way at looking at this than just GDP overall.
Did you want to answer that too?
I actually don't know what utility.
Okay.
Oh fuck, my mic is. Yeah, I don't know what utility means.
Move on to the next
Weird, you
one.
went on this huge communist economic thing and you don't know, understand utility in economics. That's weird. Okay.
Right. From CG, infrared is intellectually dishonest because he is discounting the 1956 revolt in Hungary and how many other states revolted against Soviet tyranny.
Well, I actually directly addressed and talked about 1950 Hungary, but thanks for wasting your comment.
Well, I don't think you did address them very well. You completely ignored the Prague Spring, which the Soviet Union invaded Czechoslovakia to stop liberalization. Largely, they were very pissy that once the press was free
The
in
Soviet
Czechoslovakia,
Union was
they spent
asked for
most of
help.
their time. They
The
spent most of their
Czech
time
government
insulting
asked it for
the
help.
Moscow
So,
communists.
yeah, the Czech government
The excuse that they were afraid that Hungary would go to the West after they'd been fucked with so much by the Soviets is a poor excuse. That's like an abusive boyfriend murdering his girlfriend because he's worried she'll find a better boyfriend.
You said it was because of the market economy. You said it was because of the market economy.
No, I said it's because they wanted liberalization and they wanted liberalization.
You said the Soviet Union wanted to prevent the market economy.
Liberalization and more investment from the West.
Literally had nothing to do with it. You said they wanted a market economy, and it literally had nothing to do with it.
No, I said they wanted state liberalization. And yeah, they did want some market liberalization.
That had nothing to do with the Soviet Union's invasion.
Yes, it did.
Well, we can play back the fucking clip and see exactly what you said.
It did have a lot with the Soviet invasion. They stopped them specifically to stop specifically to stop more pluralism in the government and moving into a more Western economic system.
You don't know what you're talking about.
As they did with Czechoslovakia in the Prague Spring. It's weird that every time people have a say, they want to get as far away from you as possible,
Prague Spring,
and you're forced to fucking invade them.
The Prague Spring, they weren't asking for fucking liberalization during the Prague Spring. They were asking for a different type of socialism, by the way.
No, they were asking for market liberalization, for state liberalization.
No, they weren't. They were asking for socialism with a human face. You don't know what you're
No, they weren't.
About.
Socialism with a human face was...
Dude, the Prague Spring was a really sporadic student uprising. It was like May 68. The Prague Spring was like May 68 in France. It was like a bunch of students with really ambiguous ideals or whatever.
No, it was not like that in France. It was, first off, Alexander Dubček, the leader of Czechoslovakia, and the vast majority of the citizenry who rose up and were fighting with the Soviet invaders for up to 8 months after the invasion, and pockets of resistance all around the country.
I thought the government was illegitimate.
Yeah, the overall communist state was illegitimate. Alexander Dubček was a rare gem in the shithole that was communist Eastern Europe.
Conveniently an enemy of the Soviet Union and the enemy of the Eastern Bloc is the...
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, most moral people, most God-fearing good men are enemies of the Soviet Union and the Eastern Bloc.
Okay, that's what you're saying, but I don't know.
All right, so from G.A. Korobov, Cheshire Cat, you don't owe anything to the Anglos in that orphanage. Free your mind, bruh.
I wasn't adopted by Anglos. My mother is an Italian immigrant. I'm pro-island. I grew up learning IRA songs, and I'm pro Scottish independence. I am not hypnotized by the Anglo menace. Do not worry, chatters. I am woke on the Anglo question.
All right, so from Tyler Durden, is Cheshire Cat going to make an argument for Christian democracy or just try to argue against communism?
Well, my argument is that my system is better. As I said in my earlier statement, and as I'll reiterate in my closing statement, that I think Christian democracy offers a more democratic state. Obviously, our economic systems offer a better standard of living than any of the communists have been able to offer. And I also believe people are clearly suffering under this sort of weird neoliberal atheistic worldview where people are expected to take narcotics to feel happy now. And I think Christian democracy uniquely handles that as well.
Okay. From Dat Robot, Cheshire Cat, why do you argue Christian democracy works because of the economies of Germany and Austria and the likes? By that same metric, isn't Marxism-Leninism a more successful system because of the GDP of China, the world's largest economy?
No. See, my idea is that people are able to do this under a liberal, liberal state where they aren't being tortured
it.
by their own government,
Prove it.
where they also have better access to education, better health, a better outlook on the world. I think if you look at polling, they're even happier on average. So it's not just GDP. As I mentioned in my earlier statement, it's purchasing power, it's availability of goods for the average citizen, it's availability of food, it's availability of happiness. And all of those things Christian democracy has done better and will do better than communists ever will.
Yeah, all of the alienation and loneliness and spiritual degradation that followed the collapse of communism, all of that is apparently swept under the rug. Nice one.
Well, I mean, hey, alcoholism started in the Soviet Union long before the Soviets
We're not just
collapsed.
talking about alcoholism. We're talking about widespread antisocial tendencies. We're talking about prostitution. We're talking about spiritual degradation. We're talking about lack of community. We're talking about lack of belonging, lack of purpose. All of those things followed the collapse of communism. Whereas under communism, people felt like they had a sense of community and they had a sense of society-wide solidarity.
This is not true. I will say that
and suicide rates. What about suicide rates? People are taking their lives more than they were under communism.
People weren't committing them. People didn't have a chance to kill themselves under the Soviet Union because they were being murdered by the state so often.
What?
So obviously the suicide rate is going down.
They didn't have a chance to kill themselves?
Obviously,
Why?
and also, obviously, there aren't many prostitutes in the Soviet Union because that was criminalized in like 1935. They were all sent to the gulags.
Under Christian society, under Christian society, there's widespread child trafficking. What a holy Christian society you're talking about.
Actually, in nations like Sweden, they've been cracking down on that a lot.
Sweden's the most fucked up one of all. Are you kidding? Sweden's a fully atheist, nihilistic state that everything goes. What are you talking about?
I don't believe Sweden is an atheistic nihilist state. They do have some problems, but I mean, it's not that bad.
Dude,
I mean,
isn't
to be fair, like
legal in
I would
Sweden?
say that nihilist atheism is
about?
usually brought about by the commies than it is by Christian.
No, it's literally
Democrats.
not. All Christians, conservative Christians, will admit that the real Christian values were best actualized under communist states.
That is 100% not true.
No, it's true.
Have you gone to church?
No, I'm not Christian, but I'm just telling you the facts.
So stop telling me what I believe, all right, motherfucker? Get the fuck out of here, you weird
I don't care what you believe. You're probably brainwashed by a cult.
This is why you sound so much like the.
I think you were brainwashed by a cult.
Heartless, like atheist neoliberals, because you're one of them. You just have red banners all over the place.
You don't speak for all Christians. There's many Christian communists. Pedro Castillo in Peru is one of them. There's many. The communists in Russia are Christian. What are you talking about?
Well, first off, they are Eastern Orthodox, all right? They are not part of my club, mate.
Okay, well, I think they're Christian. As a neutral spectator who's not involved in whatever cult bullshit you're talking about.
Well, yeah, but you have this, like, I mean, I keep getting these PMs. I don't want to bring it up, but people keep telling me you have this weird sense of yellow fever where you're just, like, get really hard on for Russians and Asians for some apparent reason.
What the fuck are you talking about? Do you know that I descend from...
Wait, do you actually have a guy in your Discord who's, like, a mod who pretends to be Asian, but he's actually white? And he pretends to be Chinese? Is that true?
No, I don't. What the
fuck
are you talking about?
You don't?
That's
He's making me a liar. I know. I've been told by two people now that you have guys in your community
Chinese,
who will literally pretend to be Chinese and
he's
Asian
cammed up
because
before.
they're so
He's Chinese.
about being white in your community.
He's cammed up before. He's Chinese. The guy that's a showrunner, Ezra, he's actually Chinese, you dumb fuck. Look at our fucking archives. He's cammed up before in our videos. You sound stupid as shit. You're talking about a hard on. Listen, you don't even show your fucking camera, you fucking pussy. Shut the fuck up. You don't even show your fucking camera. You fucking pussy. You don't even show your fucking camera.
I'm a poor worker. I can't afford a good camera. Sorry, mate. But
you can't afford a good camera. You're full of fucking shit. You're so full of fucking shit.
Who are fucking pretending to be Asian.
You're full of fucking shit. Hey, buddy, why are you sexually harassing me? Why are you sexually harassing me? Why are you sexually harassing me?
Oh,
you can't have my dick. Fuck off.
I think you were the one shouting that you were going to skull fuck me earlier. So I think you're the one doing the sexual harassment.
Yeah, you said you have a hard on. What the fuck are you talking about, you fucking weirdo? What a Christian you are, huh? That you talk.
Wait, what are you gonna bring in my face?
Mouth. What a Christian you are with such
mouth?
a filthy, disgusting mouth.
Hey, I'm a good Christian. I
Christian.
haven't advocated for genocide.
Let me get some fake Christian guys. Fake Christian chat. Let him know
Damn.
who's a fake Christian.
You're so
He's a
pissy and
fake
lost
Christian.
right now. You're going after my faith. You don't even know what
Okay,
sect of
we'll see
Christianity
who
I
won
am.
after the debate's over. We'll see.
Hey, I saw it in the chat. You've been fucking pumping your supporters into the fucking YouTube
No, I
chat. They're all
haven't. I'm on
spamming
Twitch,
gorillas.
you dipshit. You can't even
They're
see
all
my
spamming
chat.
gorillas.
You can't even see my chat, dipshit. I'm on fucking Twitch. What the
Wait,
fuck are you
Twitch is a
talking about?
public platform. I have a Twitch. You can see public Twitch chats.
Okay, well, the only
What do you
chat
mean I can't see your
I'm
chat?
talking to is the one in my fucking chat. You just
Okay.
make shit up. You're a fucking liar. You know lying's a sin, right? You've lied a lot during this
I'm
debate.
not lying at all.
Lying's
I'm a
a
very
sin.
honest person.
Lying is a sin.
Wait, you literally
Lying
denied.
is a sin.
You're the one who's
Lying
denying
is a
genocide
sin.
right now. I think you've lied
There's
more than
no
me.
because no one claims there's a Polish genocide, dumb fuck. Not
It's
even the
called
biggest
Polish
anti-communists
operation.
say
The
that.
Poles currently are asking the World Court to legally.
And the World
to
Court
legally call
doesn't
this
agree with
genocide.
them. No one agrees with that.
Well, they're still talking about it right now. It's
Well, they can
obviously
talk about whatever the fuck they
obviously
want.
the Russians
They
are not
can
going to
talk
allow
about
the
whatever
UN
the
to
fuck they
recognize
want.
it as a genocide because the Russians were the ones who fucking did it. It's
They
just
can
like the
talk about whatever
Chinese
the fuck
are.
they want.
It's just like the
Just
Chinese are
because someone
stopping the UN
accused,
from
so okay, you
recognizing
committed
the,
genocide. You committed
fucking Uyghur
genocide.
genocide.
You committed genocide. I'm talking about it, therefore it's true. You committed genocide.
Okay.
Okay, so let's move on. From CG has. Oh, did I read this one? Hungary was invaded and revolted against the Soviets. The people rejected a foreign ruler, discard geopolitics. How were the Soviets right?
Yeah, a lot of people are bringing up the
It's a
fact that you
question.
It
kept
wasn't to you.
invading
Yeah,
sovereign
it wasn't to you.
states.
Not
It
a
wasn't to
question
you,
for me.
Kat. Go on, Hans.
I gotta turn up my gain because my mic is fucked up. How were the Soviets right? The Soviets had an option. Let Hungary go to the West and thereby undermine the whole Eastern Bloc and the Warsaw Pact, or do something. I admit it was a horrible situation. I'm actually of the view, though, that I hold the leadership of Hungary and the Soviet Union after Stalin's death responsible for letting that situation develop in the first place. It was a bad situation. I'm not here to celebrate it, but that was the option on the Soviet Union's table. They had this option. Were they right? Well, the situation wasn't right in the first place. The Soviet Union was isolated by viciously aggressive Western imperialism that wanted to kickstart the German and general military-industrial complex after World War II for a full-scale invasion of the Soviet Union again. After the scar of World War II, the Soviet people were not going to afford and allow or tolerate another invasion of their homeland.
Yeah, this is just not true. First off, the West kept offering you guys free money. I don't understand why. You could have at least taken the money and then done your whole weird...
No, we already
red
talked
bloc
about
shit.
Bretton. We already talked about Bretton Woods, so shut the fuck
Hey,
up. You don't have to bring it back. You already
shut
lost the
up. Stop
debate.
interrupting
You
me.
lost the debate, so you come back. And the question was addressed to me anyway, you dumb cat
We can
idiot.
both respond to these questions, okay?
Oh,
Holy
no,
shit.
that'll take forever. So we're gonna. Okay, so yeah, so GA Korobov said.
Damn,
Jesus
mods
was
are really have a
communist.
hots for Haas in this debate. Oof.
No, you just pissed me off earlier, so I think.
Oh, wait, so you're admitting that you're a bit biased now because
maybe
of
a little
your
bit.
trauma. What a pissy bitch.
I know. Anyways, so from Paul Belden, Haas, this is the second day in a row you got embarrassed in debate. Don't quit your day job.
Well, we'll see what the majority thinks after the debate's over.
Okay. Let me see what else we got here that we can pull up. G.A. Korbov, Cheshire Cat can't afford a video camera despite the triumph of Christian democracy and capitalism.
I'm a 22-year-old university student. I can't afford anything. That's just how the system is made. Also, I live in the United States. If I lived in Denmark or Germany, I could probably afford a video camera.
Go live there.
Who knows? I'm a good swimmer. I'll get right over there. All right. Too many fucking like red rose fucking commies in America anyway. Fuck the Anglosphere. Need to get out of English-speaking countries. Going to Ireland where the Celts will protect me.
So Abdullah Hassan, what do you think of fascism, Haas?
To me, fascism is a zombie mutation of liberalism and also liberal democracy.
Okay. From
I think it's
CG.
weird.
What the hell?
Nobody fucking cares,
Hey.
dude. Shut up.
CG, how does infrared account for Stalinists destroying the Catalonia commune during the Spanish Civil War as being justified if they were moral doing so?
Right, it's a lie. Actually, what happened is that towards the end of the war, the left opposition to the so-called Stalinists negotiated with Franco because they feared communists seizing power of the Popular Front. So actually, a combination of anarchists, Trotskyists and liberals were the ones who undermined the war effort and actually fucked the whole thing over. The idea that Stalinists were sabotaging it, Stalinists who were pushing for a broad popular front to focus on the actual war effort and winning the Spanish majority, while the anarchists were doing dumb fucking experimental bullshit that was a complete distraction. Yeah, try again, buddy.
Okay, so from Based and Red Pilled, ask the Christian democracy how he feels about monarchy since heaven is a kingdom.
Oh, I remember this guy in the Discord. I do not believe in your conception of heaven as some sort of divine monarchy like we have on Earth. Heaven is non-corporeal, first of all, so it doesn't even count. Insofar, I said in the very beginning of the debate that I don't even consider constitutional monarchies to be truly liberal societies. That's why I advocate for the abolishment of the Swedish and the British monarch, because those fuckers need to go. They're Norman invaders anyway. Fuck the Queen. She's German. Yeah, so I don't support monarchy. I support a multi-party representative system.
All right, so from Dragon Nightmare, ask Cheshire Cat if he believes in the labor aristocracy.
Fuck. Do I have to Google this? Labor aristocracy is what, where you have like these, I don't know, skilled upper class laborers who perform their own aristocracy within the working class or some shit. I don't know. I do believe that there's like this, so you have this sort of middle class and comfortable working class of very skilled workers, and I think, for instance, in housing policy, when it comes to like blocking paying their taxes on housing in California, I do think it does look weird when you have these very successful middle class people who seem like they want to shut the door on economic mobility behind them, and when they get the chance to fuck around with their local politics. But I mean, that's bad, but that seems to be a problem that every single system in the world has had, and no one has been able to fix it so far.
Okay, let me see.
At least my labor aristocracy and capitalism isn't sending you to a gulag.
Okay, from Grima 2 to Haas, what's your opinion on the book Everyday Stalinism?
These are interesting books. I recommend them. They're going to give you a far more nuanced, far more impartial view. Obviously, they're still biased, but they're way better than the dumb bullshit that Cheshire Cat reads that says the communists were eating babies and killed 5 billion people and were doing all of these horrible things. So yeah, I can give my thumbs up that these are more or less pretty reliable sources.
I would recommend the book The Cold War by Odd Arne Vested. He is one of the foremost scholars on the Cold War in Asia, in Eurasia, to be fair, on the planet. He has a very good book. The audiobook is lovely. And if you have a subscription to Audible,
yeah, no one cares. The question was for me.
Let's
get this along. The question was for me. No one gives a shit. Shut the fuck up.
No, you shut the fuck up. Nobody cares about you.
Did we do this full metal? Are the oppressed colonized nations Denmark and Canada? I'm not sure if we did that one. They're all over the place, all these questions.
No, I just think it's funny people talk about these other nations who were most of their history also colonies, and talk about them like they were traipsing around Africa. Like, I mean, Denmark was in the Northern Wars, to be fair, pre-Northern Wars, were like a backwoods of the Swedish Empire, and just sort of got batted between the Swedish Empire and the Prussian Empire for a while. Canada was invaded by was taken over and stolen from the French, and sadly, as much as America tried, we could not liberate them in the War of 1812. But yeah, both of these, even, believe it or not, even white people can be oppressed colonials. Yeah, I understand that you hate white people, Haz.
It's really sad that it was stolen from the French. It's like the indigenous white people of Canada must really have been upset about that.
So CG said that I missed their super chat about the Spanish Civil War. I could have swore I read this, but I'll just read it again just in case. How does infrared account for Stalinist?
No, you read it. You read it.
Yeah, I read that. Okay, you so all right, so I didn't miss it. The third rail by Omar. Haz, are you Arabic?
Yes.
Okay. Now let's get to some of these that I had to jot down from.
How do you feel about the genocide of the Kurds by the Iraqis?
Why the fuck would you ask me that, you dumbass? What? Because I'm Arabic.
I'm guessing you don't have a very good opinion on that one either. Is that another genocide that didn't exist, or was this justified?
So you're assuming I have views about Kurdish people because of my ethnicity? Yikes!
Well, I was just curious. Do you think
what a brotherly Christian thing of you? You're just a racist. What a brotherly, holy Christian assumption you just made.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I know it's the gypsy side. Sorry. I'm assuming you think the Kurds are backed by the CIA and deserved it.
I have literally no idea how to pronounce that, so I'm not even gonna try. Do you know how to pronounce that, Oz?
It's like, yeah, it's like Irish. We'll never get there. Shilling for Anglo metaphysics. Yeah, well, he's brainwashed. It's not his fault.
Okay. All right. So from Dragon Nightmare, question for Cheshire Cat. I'm fucking his wife. What will he do? Okay, no. That's not a question. All right. So from Colombia, can you get them to steer back to whether Marxian socialism is better than Christian democracy? Okay, that must have been a
Yeah,
while
I
ago.
was trying to debate that, but he wanted to talk about ninjas and samurais.
Wait, can you say that again?
No. From Adrian Zenz. Oh God, these are a lot of troll questions, you guys. Come on. From Didi Defeater. For infrared, how do you explain the overwhelming consensus among historians in a variety of diverse fields, economists, and other experts that Marxist socialism is unsuccessful?
China has a population of 1.4 billion people. So that consensus, if you're just, because consensus means it's like, oh, it's a bunch of people. Well, there's more people in China who disagree with that. I rest my case.
I think they're talking about academics. And I mean, the broad
Western
history is
academics.
that you guys have been underdeveloped and shitty.
There's Western academics and there's Chinese academics. Who's more right? Who's more whatever?
Well, you do have the yellow fever, so you probably trust the Chinese ones more.
Yeah, again with the sexual harassment. Very Christian of you.
That's not sexual. You can have
Yeah, it
social
is.
yellow fever and just like them more. I didn't even bring up sex.
Okay,
I'm a virgin.
I am not of European descent, so I don't know why you're saying yellow fever when I'm actually a fucking Arab. Shut the fuck up, you dumbass.
Arabs aren't Asians. You realize that, right?
Yeah, well, we're not in Europe either, so shut the fuck up.
You can be Arab and have yellow fever.
Okay.
Hey,
Keep
hey,
it with
we've all been
keep
there.
on yeah
Everybody
keep
thinks
it with the
Asian women are
racism.
cute.
You're literally a fucking racist. So if I talk about China
You're the
because I have
one.
yellow fever,
Wait, I still want to hear your opinion on the genocide of the Kurds before you call me racist. You're
because
also
you're
denying
fucking
multiple
racist.
other genocides of other ethnic
why are you
minorities.
asking me about the genocide of the Kurds? What about my background
Well,
justifies asking
because
that?
it was. I mean, commies like you tend to really
Well,
like
no,
the
you asked
Iraqi
that question
government who are doing
right
that.
when you found out I was Arab is when you asked that question. So please clarify.
Well, I just wanted to get your opinion on the Iraqi history there, since there's some socialism there as well.
What, I'm Iraqi now too, and even if I was,
Are you?
From Zoltan.
Oofed.
Kat, what would you
Racist.
say about Persia making Germany being done by military force? Also, thoughts on Coca-Cola sending mercenaries to kill Union leaders?
You mean Prussia, not Persia. Learn to read, Blondie.
Persia. I said Persia. Pick
All
up.
right, Prussia, the great state of Prussia.
Whatever.
Kat, what do you say about Prussia making Germany being done by military force? That's an odd way to word it grammatically. I think that Prussian militarism really had a Prussian militarism and the idea of the sort of military aristocracy that infected Germany, even into the Weimar Republic, was very harmful. It was dangerous. It probably
Germany wouldn't
was the
exist
thing
without it.
that collapsed. Arguing for Prussian militarism now, weird.
No, but Germany wouldn't exist without that.
Well, you're right, but Germany would have probably been a collection of more independent, smaller states, which isn't necessarily a bad thing.
But they wouldn't
as
be a
long-
Christian democracy.
Smaller nations can, like Bavaria can be its own independent nation as
They
well
would
and
be
still follow separate
principalities
economic
and they would
lines.
be feudal principalities. They wouldn't be democracies.
Well, these people could unify into separate democratic
But
states
that's not
as
what
they
happened,
wish.
is it?
Well, to be fair, before Bismarck took over in the wars of unification, they already were dividing themselves into a northern Germanic states and a southern Germanic states, right? So there was Prussia and the northern states,
Yeah,
like
Austria and
Württemberg, Bavaria,
Prussia, we know. You don't
and
have
then
to
there were
keep
the southern
rambling.
German
Shut up.
states surrounded
Okay,
by
move on.
Austria.
Moving on.
I think my German history is better than you. It's weird that you
No,
will
it's not,
randomly.
because listen, just because I don't want to talk about every possible subject in the fucking Wikipedia encyclopedia doesn't mean I'm dodging it. It means you literally are fucking talking like free jazz. You don't have to talk about every possible fucking thing that comes to your mind because it's not fucking relevant. Yeah, we could talk about the rivalry between the Habsburg monarchy and the Prussian fucking militarist dynasties. We could talk about all of it. Where really? Can you fucking stay on topic, dumbass?
Opinion on the Kurds again? You keep refusing to answer that. I assumed if it was a better opinion than they deserved it, you'd probably respond.
I'm not
Okay,
going to
so-
entertain your racist baiting. Nice try.
All right. So from so ask the cat dude if he prays in public.
I do. Yes.
Fake Christian.
What?
John Longs. For Haz, excluding yourself, who do you think is the top 5 political debaters on Twitch, YouTube?
Number 1 is Jackson Hinkle. 2, I only named 2. Number 1 is Jackson Hinkle that I know of. 2, Caleb Maupin. They're actually really close. I don't know. 3, I don't know. I can't think of anyone else right now. 3, I'm gonna say Zerka on Twitch. He's actually, yeah, he beat Destiny a lot of times.
From GA Corp. So, Brittany, why are Western idealists always low down misogynists? I don't know. Okay, I think those are the ones that we got there. So, okay, I'm gonna go back to the ones that we jotted down. From Dylan Blay, ask Haas if he will debate me on theory and which brand of communism is better, Marxist-Leninism versus.
I will, yeah. We just have to schedule it. I will.
All right. Okay. And let's see here. Memories of the future for infrared. If when countries already have infrastructure, why build a new one? Infrared, stop being stupid, learn some math.
No, because you have to build new
True.
infrastructure during the passage of time. Infrastructure doesn't last forever. Nice try, dumbass.
Well, you said that. Why are they building off of the Soviet ones? Like, clearly, everybody just builds off of the infrastructure.
No,
they have.
because they can't. They're still relying upon that decaying infrastructure. They can't even build new ones. Meaning the communists
They're
did all
building
the
off of it.
the
Fuck, in my
communists did all
farm
the
community,
heavy
there are
lifting.
like stone walls
The
that probably
communists did the
existed
heavy
before the
lifting.
Soviet Union.
The
that
communists
existed
did the
are
heavy
running
lifting, and
farmland.
capitalist society is taking advantage of the things the communists built. That's the fucking point.
All right, the Soviet Union, while it was growing after 28, was just taking advantage of goods it was
No,
buying
it wasn't,
from
because
France and Germany to industrialize them.
actually industrialized and renovated the whole fucking country. What a horrible
Yeah,
example.
by buying French and German industrial equipment with grain,
No,
grain
it
money
also-
that
it
they
also-
stole from
well,
the Ukrainians.
No. The primary fucking
Soviet
bulk.
Union using
The
blood money
primary
from a
bulk of
genocided
Soviet
people
industry.
to buy French and German machinery to
Yeah,
pretend
of
that
course they
socialism
bought
is
some
building it.
machinery from Ford
Oops.
and other people, but guess what? The bulk of it was Soviet made.
Bulk of it was German and French made.
No, it wasn't. That's a fucking lie. Lying is a sin, by the way.
You keep saying that, but that doesn't make it true.
It is a
You just
fucking
bought
sin.
bunch of-
Lying
your
is a sin.
industrialization was just
Lying
buying a bunch
is a
of shit
sin.
from France and Germany.
Lying is a sin. Saying they got it all from France and Germany is a lie.
Just stealing shit from Germany and Czechoslovakia to
Well,
replace it.
What did they steal? What did they steal? You dumbass.
They ripped out They ripped out thousands of
You're talking about
cars,
after World
industrial
War II?
equipment.
You're talking about after
Yeah.
World War II?
Yeah.
Shut the fuck
Your
up.
industrialization
Germany
was
had
by stealing
reparations.
shit from
Dude,
Czechoslovakia.
Dude, 20 to 30 million Soviets died in World War II. Of
Yeah,
course
it
they're going to
sucks that your
demand
government was so
reparations from
shit at
Germany.
defending itself. Maybe
course-
if you weren't siding with the
Oh yeah,
Nazis, so much,
the
you had a
innocent
better
Germans
defense
were
plan.
defending themselves. Go ahead. The innocent Germans
No,
were
it's-
defending themselves. Go ahead.
Poles in
So-
Eastern Europe to defend yourself, and then when the war comes down, you're an absolute fucking failure
Shut
anyway.
the fuck up. Why did
Holy
Poland
shit.
why did Poland reject the fucking treaty with the Soviet Union for a non-aggression pact as
Because they
security
didn't want
alliance?
to give up. Because they didn't want to give
nah,
Soviet
nah.
troops
Shut the
free
fuck
lane on
up.
Polish territory. Obviously.
Oh yeah, because the Soviet Union was just gonna steal territory. What a fucking lie. What a cope.
So from Amare 316, as a Christian, I honestly think Christian democracy is gay. And somebody also asked why the cat is so racist.
He's a fake Christian.
Okay, and then
But is it the Gorobov guy? He's really molding a chat. Stay mad. You are giving money to this filthy capitalist, Brittany over here. I
rude.
hope you enjoy giving
one
money to the
cares.
system you hate.
Okay. Anyways, from Diet, I don't even know.
One, I have to
Diogenes.
pee really, really bad. Is that okay?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah,
Okay,
go
okay,
ahead.
yeah.
From Diogenes for the cat. Do you learn everything about politics from Wikipedia?
No. However, Wikipedia is a nice place to look for sources. Now, I generally look for other things. Encyclopedia Britannica is good. Buying books is nice. I just got a really nice one, an amalgamation of essays from European constructionists. It's pretty fun. I'm going to push Arne Vested in the chat again. Read that guy; he's great. But yeah, I mean, there are other places to get politics from than Wikipedia. I think it's funny you're criticizing me because it sounds like I got some information from Wikipedia when all of you commies literally get all your entire political philosophy from fucking internet memes.
Well, he's not here, so.
Yeah, he's having a cry in the bathroom. We all
Yes.
understand.
Yeah,
He's fleeing, he's running away. As Jesus said, the wicked flee when only the righteous follow.
There's another question for him, but let's pull up the ones that we can pull up for you. From Starfish. Ask Cat why he hates women.
I like women very much, actually. I think I've said some interesting. And Brittany knows I like women. Wait, the Czarfish. Yeah, this Czarfish guy. Why do you like autocracy? You were in here. You spent the entire time bitching about how the fascists and the socialists need to unite against the liberals. So I mean, it's sort of weird. Why do you hate women?
All right. So from Memories of the Future, for Kat, does he know how much given by EU go back to? Like, I'm just picturing him in his accent right now. To EU, of course not. Otherwise, he wouldn't talk this dumb drivel.
Romania's getting a shit ton of free money from the EU. All right, it's surprising that they are handing that shit out. I hope they continue to do it.
Look how he talks shit when I go pee.
Okay, so from Full Metal, question for Hawes: do you think the cat won't turn on their webcam because they are too busy waging a PPW for Denmark?
Yeah, I think so. It's of all things, especially if you don't even have money, of all things to shill, like create this LARPing identity for Germany and Rhine cap. Wow, dude. The cope.
From GA Korobov. Jesus also said, "Shut up, Angloid cat." John 3:16.
He did not say that.
I'm pretty sure
that is not gospel.
He definitely said it.
He did not shut it. Shut up, mod. Right, you're supposed to be unbiased, bitch.
All right. So from Czarfish. Democracy is for cucks who shill for globalists. Also, why is Cat a virgin at 22? Okay. All right. So
democracy is pretty good, and my sexual habits are my own, and they don't concern you. They do concern your mother, though. Better watch out for her.
What a great Christian.
Because I swear it's going to be like a racehorse. Once the floodgates open, there's no stopping me.
So I think this might be one of the last ones from Pepe Sylvia for Infrared. Is it your idea that consent of the governed is self-evident if there is not a revolution?
No, I'm just saying there's many different factors. There's many ways to look at it. It's way more ambiguous. People do not become an organic unit form of a state strictly by means of voting in an election. There's something more ambiguous going on with that.
Okay. Full Metal says Jesus would turn on his webcam.
Jesus did not exist in a time with webcams.
Tyler Durden said, "Cat, how did it feel to get owned?"
To be fair, I was hoping for more. All right, this was underwhelming.
Okay. So from Scourge God, yo bucket, the IMF destroyed Romania and the what is that? Bucharest? I don't even know what that says. Orphanages are the...
Wait, that's the name of a city. It's Bucharest. You can't pronounce it.
Shut up. Okay. I'm not very good with these places. Orphanages are the legacy of those crippling loans.
So orphanages are the legacy of those. No, actually, the reason Romania has so many fucking orphans is because the communist government banned contraceptives because they needed their women to be producing, in their words, more labor units. They also executed people who got abortions. Although I don't like abortions, contraceptives are probably important. Of course, they created this failing government-run orphanage.
Keep coping. Romanians love Ceausescu. Romanians remember it fondly, and they love the guy.
Yeah, they really liked him. He made very good target practice.
No, they like him. 50%.
Yeah, they liked him. They liked him because he was fun to shoot in the street with his shitty wife.
You don't represent Romania. Keep coping.
Neither does he. He got shot. He's dead now.
Yeah, and Romania is so great off for it.
All right, so we can do closing statements and final thoughts. So, Kat, why don't you go first?
No, I opened. I have to go last time.
No, let him go first.
No, I want final on the closing statement. You made me go first, and the mod's been biased this entire time. I want my closing statement.
All right, fine.
Do it, bitch.
Okay, no, now you're going last. I know, now you're going first.
Yeah, let him go first.
Yeah,
let him go first.
No, I'm going last. Infrared can go first.
No, you're going first. You're
Okay.
going first because
you were about to let it happen to the bitch
exactly.
comment.
No, fuck that. Fuck that.
No, fuck you, Todd. You're pissy all. You were pissed.
Okay, mute. There you go. You forfeited your time, or you can get unmuted.
The regular.
There you go.
All right. So, do you want to go or not, Kat? Wait, why is he still muted?
Damn, the fucking... Oh, Todd is so pissy as well. He's still fucking biased.
Well, stop pissing us off then.
You know, I think it's funny, all of the regulars in the chat
Oh, he's cutting out. Wait, what? Did you mute him again, Todd? What's going on?
No, I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't touch anything.
Oh, what's going on with the mute? Are you gonna go, Kat, or not?
No, let him go first. You keep muting me anyway. So why? Obviously, you want me to go last. You keep fucking muting me.
Todd. Oh, God, you guys. Okay. No. Fucking hell. How's we just go?
Okay, well, I'm gonna keep it short because I think I already won the debate anyway. Here's the thing. I came into this prepared to debate about the topic of Rhine capitalism, aka the social market economy, versus Marxian socialism as experienced by the people who lived under it. I made extensive, well, not really extensive, but I prepared more or less, researched about the case of East Germany, and I really wanted to talk about that. I wanted to talk about the specifics of that subject matter. I came here and I was very disappointed to find that Cheshire Cat, instead of wanting to talk about the actual topic of the debate, wanted to engage in a type of debate free jazz where he flails his arms in every possible direction, spewing out as much bullshit as he can think of, under the impression that I wouldn't methodically and systematically deconstruct and absolutely blow the fuck out of every dumb fucking point he was trying to throw in my direction. And despite the fact that I did that, it detracted from the wider aim and scope of this debate, which was talking about Rhine capitalism versus Marxian socialism. He preferred to talk about samurais and ninjas. As far as Cheshire Cat's understanding of history is concerned, he can only take a very broad view of things. He never actually will debate about anything in particular and stick to that particular topic. He'll move and globetrot around the whole world just to cope and save face for his absurd ideological pretension of so-called Christian democracy. Cheshire Cat is clearly unable to engage with the rich and deep history of communists and communist statehood, and it's also very clear he's a racist and a fake Christian. He's overall a pathetic person, and I think he forfeits the debate unambiguously.
All right, Kat, go on.
Am I not going to be muted for my closing? Can I have at least that, Todd?
Go on.
All right. So this debate did not go very well. So my points have always been that Christian democracy, liberal economics, multi-party democracy, and not ignoring your faith when we move on into the future, because obviously we still need our connection with God, will always be a better path forward than Bolshevism or whatever the fuck Infrared is spewing here. Infrared has spent most of his time here advocating for authoritarianism. He doesn't believe that democratic states should actually have elections. They shouldn't care what the people think, because he knows that when the people do have a say, they never vote for his type of shithole. He spent the times advocating for the Soviet Union and China, both states which were anti-worker, anti-democracy, which stopped independent trade unions, which destroyed independent worker councils because they hated the worker, and Haas hates the worker as well. My system has led to a more prosperous people. The Czechs, coming out of a socialist shithole, were able to create one of the best countries to live in at the moment. I think they have one of the highest rates of education, highest rates of transparency, and the higher rates of education, and very low government corruption. I think my system speaks for itself. While people will always run around and defend old dictatorships because they've never had to live under them, and they know and they understand at their heart that they're never actually going to have to do anything. It's just fun to advocate for some long collapsed dictatorship because it's hard to actually do real policy like Christian Democrats have. But in the end, I think the world speaks for itself. When we increase democracy, people vote more in line with my positions than with Haas's. And that will be the end of my closing statement.
All right. Thank you so much. All right. So thank you guys for